Chair now recognizes himself for the purposes of an opening statement for 5 minutes. I want to thank our witness, Ms. Victoria Salinas, the senior official performing the duties of Deputy Administrator for FEMA's Office of Resilience, for being here today. Today's hearing will focus on examining the costs and benefit of FEMA's increasing emphasis on mitigation. FEMA provides hazard mitigation funding to state, tribal, and territorial governments through several grant programs, including the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program, and the Flood Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. FEMA also provides hazard mitigation funding through its public assistance and individual assistance programs. FEMA reported that in fiscal year 2023, it had obligated more than $2.93 billion in funding for hazard mitigation grants. Going further back in time, FEMA obligated more than $1.78 billion in fiscal year 2022, more than $2.34 billion in fiscal year 2021, more than $1.31 billion in fiscal year 2020, and more than $1.16 billion in fiscal year 2019. I know the numbers kind of make people's eyes glaze over, but that means over the past 5 fiscal years, FEMA has obligated more than $9.5 billion for mitigation grant funding. That's a lot of money. That's not counting for all mitigation assistance spent in the years prior. And given this huge sum of money, obviously, we have several concerns. First, despite literally spending billions of dollars on mitigation work, FEMA continues to ask Congress for more money. It is my understanding that FEMA is once again asking for supplemental funding for the Disaster Relief Fund, which is estimated to run out of money sometime this summer. And while FEMA claims that hazard mitigation funding will reduce the cost of disasters, FEMA continues to spend billions of dollars per disaster. So we're looking for where's the cost benefit, how does the investment actually equal lower or less dollars being spent. FEMA's 2023 National Preparedness Report stated that between January 2020 and December of 22, there were 60 climate-related disasters costing at least $1 billion each. We fail to see how the $9.5 billion in mitigation funding has significantly saved our taxpayers' dollar. I'm not even sure significantly is the right word, but we're also concerned that the types of mitigation projects that FEMA is choosing to fund, we're concerned about them. And reviewing some of the more recent mitigation projects approved by FEMA, terms like nature-based solutions and climate resilience appear in many of the project descriptions. FEMA is funding projects to plant trees and improve habitat for wildlife, which is all very nice, but I'm not sure it's part of the core mission and something we need to be spending tax dollars on. None of this is within the scope of responsibility of FEMA's mission. And if that's where FEMA is funneling our taxpayer funds, is the agency really achieving the stated goals of these mitigation grants, which is to reduce disaster costs and save lives? Further, concerningly, FEMA has continued to struggle to make hazard mitigation funding available to the communities that need it the most. The application process to receive mitigation grants is complicated. So complex, in fact, it creates real challenges for small communities attempting to apply for these funds, and those who can't afford to hire grant writers are the ones that are at a loss. We see that wealthier states with the means to pay for outside consultants and grant writers successfully receive FEMA funds while smaller states are passed over. Are these funds truly being focused on reducing risk where it is most needed? So what I really want to know is how FEMA is awarding these funds. Is the agency actually targeting investments to strategically counter the effect of natural disasters? Or is it simply funneling money to states that have the resources available to jump through the hurdles and complete the application process? FEMA's BRIC program is a prime illustration of those concerns. For the first 3 years of funding, 5 states accounting for 30% of the nation's population received 50%, half through the BRIC, whereas 24 smaller states accounting for 21% of the nation's population combined were only awarded 5% of BRIC funding. That's a pretty stark contrast. In fact, according to analysis done by outside groups, the San Francisco and New York metro area have been the most successful in applying for BRIC funding. Is there any accountability whatsoever for this? How can FEMA justify its allocation of funds? We want to discuss these questions with our witness today, and we want to dig into how FEMA determines which projects have the merit to receive mitigation funding and whether the process targets funding to projects that actually mitigate against disasters. FEMA can't solve everyone's problems, and if FEMA is going to fund mitigation, at the very least, the project should demonstrate they will actually reduce the cost of disasters. As a matter of fact, that's the point of it. With that, I look forward to hearing from our witness on these issues. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Ms. Titus, for 5 minutes for an opening statement.